end pieces, assuming it's, you know, radius right all the way. And you can actually kind of use that to hold up to the bridge, just to kind of see if the radius is.
Yeah, that would be good. And let's say it was especially if you had a 7 1/4 or a 9 1/2, save that piece. The bottom of your nut slot on a fender is rounded, so then you can put your sandpaper on top of that and use it to true up the bottom of the nut. That would work too. It's a good idea. And then, yeah, you can totally use your fingerboard as a radius gauge. And it might be easier because it's flat and long to put it up against your saddle. And then use a flat pencil. Which I'll show you what a flat pencil looks like, and just it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a pencil and it's flat.
Like a carpenter's pencil?
You can use, that's what I did. I even put a piece of carbon fiber on top of mine. It's ridiculous, but it's fun. All right, somebody remind me what I was doing. I was going to show you all a picture of how I do the top of the saddle.
Right there.
Okay, this is the saddle. Look at it like this. Like we're looking down on top of the guitar. This is saddle number 2. So this is the high E side, low E side. And so what we see a lot of times is, most of the time we'll see a compensated saddle where we're going to put our string holes. Behind the saddle. So we got a compensation typically here at the B. We'll see it usually come up. So we'll have the crowning up here, the crowning around here. And sometimes this is rounded like that, and sometimes it's just a straight 2 cuts. You know, and then this will just have a straight line back here. And then typically we'll have another angle that runs this direction. And that's where our crown would be. We want to carve this in. So that's what a compensated saddle looks like from the top. You got an angle up here going off. This angle's down, and that angle's up for those crownings. And this is kind of rounded over on the back of here. B string on an acoustic gets a lot of compensation because it's almost as big as your A and your E, because the inside core of that string is kind of like the inside core of one of your big strings. If this was an electric guitar and you didn't have a wound G, your compensation would look more like this. That'd be the top of the first saddle, this being the second saddle, this being the third. Then back up to your D string, A string, E string. That's where your strings would take off. Thank you.
That scared the hell out of me.
All right, so the way I'm going to carve it is different, because I like the way this looks, because it looks more elegant. And it's shaped like a lightning bolt, which is cool. So where my G and B is, in between these, I'm going to make an angle like this. It's going to be my first angle that I'm not going to touch. It's going to stay flat. And then this, I'm going to cut an angle this way. And this, let me draw a straight line. I'm going to carve an angle that way. See what I'm talking about? So we're going to be going uphill, string rising up that. These are going to be going downhill, uphill, downhill. And we're going to buff that out, and it's going to be pretty. And it's, well, I hope so. I don't have my buffer here. I'm doing this by hand.
How severe is that angle?
Not super severe, and you kind of want to. I mean, you don't want a chiseled edge because you're going to pop strings.
Yeah.
I kind of have to gauge. You kind of have to gauge on the saddle where the brake angle. Like if I had a really long brake angle coming off the back of a saddle, then that first. It doesn't matter what the front side looks like. You know, you just want to be consistent and have the same angle. So when the light shines on it, it has a nice kind of chiseled look. It just takes a little practice. Gauge towards, like when we get into cutting nut slides, like we'll cut a nut slide, the same angle as the peg head. We're just going to change a few things in there to help keep that front edges out from binding and the back edges out from binding. And then pay attention to how much bone we have around that string. So, with that said, I'm going to rough this in. And we were talking about neck angles earlier. And if y'all remember, I was saying I don't like overset necks because they're not good for guitars. And there's a lot of guitar shops where I've heard the repair guys complain because the owner of their shop, when a guitar comes in for a neck set, the owner's like, overset it a little bit, you know, like they're giving their customer their money's worth. They're going to get more years out of the neck set. But if you've got a tall saddle that's too tall, and you have a brake angle coming off the back of that saddle, so you've got a string that, if it's really tall, the string's almost coming straight up and then over. All right, now let's pretend that guitar goes through the summer months. We just had a drought here in Alabama, so we may experience a lot more of that every summer. Maybe we're going to have a lot drier seasons. And that top decides it wants to flatten out because it's dry. Because when the top's wet, I sold you that top J that I would use to see how damp it was in the shop. It worked better than a hygrometer. And it was dramatic, I'm telling you.
What does overset the neck mean? Is that why you said let's not just turn the truss rod again, let's look at the nut?
Okay, yeah, that's a good point. I'm glad you said that, 'cause sometimes
I've never heard that term.
Okay. Let's say we're gonna look at, and this goes for electrics and acoustics, but we're gonna say we've got the side of an acoustic body here. We have your bridge, your saddle, your fingerboard, and that's your neck. All right, so this neck can't be dead flat. You know, we come off at a back neck angle. That's what we're talking about, your back neck angle. That completely changes your string height. It's one of the main key roles in how a guitar is going to play. So let's say we have let's say the strings have to come off and touch the nut here. But let's say we move the neck up this way, and we change the neck angle this way. Well, this part doesn't change much, just this part, because you're tilting it this way. But then the strings end up touching over here, so now you have much higher action with that saddle height. But if you have the neck at more of a back neck angle, then the strings are going to get real close to the fingerboard. So we have to raise the saddle to get it to start getting it off the board. And so that's your neck angle. And I don't know degrees because I always go by the bridge because everything's different. Top rise is different. I mean, you have certain degrees that you kind of would go by, like a Les Paul is going to be 3 to 4 degree back neck angle. On banjos, when I would make them, I like them to be about 2 degrees. Unless you're a bluegrass player, and it would be higher, steeper. But let's say you got let's say it gets dry outside, and you got a tall saddle, and then that string's coming up. It's working like a crowbar or leverage to try to push the bridge forward. It's just naturally going to do that because it's pushing this way, and you've got or the strings are pulling that way from the tuners. And if your top flattens out, it's not a dome anymore because the flat top's not flat. It's got a dome, or it's supposed to. And if it didn't have a dome when it started, the string rise will give it a dome. There's rumors that early Martins weren't built with any kind of dome in the top. So a flat top guitar typically is going to have a small amount of dome built into it the whole way. And if you've ever seen radius dishes, I'm sure there might be one here, which we can pull out and look at. That's typically how you shape a brace and how you glue them onto the top in a domed dish. And it's very slight. If you put this on there, you'll see it'll rock back and forth. Because we're at a dome already with the strings off. That dome will get more pronounced. When your guitar gets dry, that will flatten out. And in severe cases, it will go the other way. Okay, once it flattens out, you don't have that support anymore. It has a dome for a reason. It has a dome just like the way we build bridges. When you see a bridge, it domes over like this, and that gives it the support when we drive over. If you make a bridge totally flat, it would probably collapse. This does the same thing. So once that gets flat, it doesn't have that arch anymore that's right here. And you get a torque. And then, you showed me a guitar, just yours, and it starts to have that. That could have started when maybe the braces are a little thin. Two, it could be maybe it got really dry, and then it gave it the opportunity to start warping. Where if it never got dry, then it may have not have done it. So it looks flat.
It's not glued down, sorry.
But it's actually a dish. And so when let's pretend this is the guitar top, you would lay it on there. On the sandpaper here for a reason too. You can shape your sides, but you can also, once this is glued down, shape your braces by running them back and forth, and you can get to carve the dome into your braces. There's other jigs. Jim showed me cool jigs that clamps braces in there that you shave that will make it. When you have show and tell at some point. And then when you glue them on, your top goes face down, and we use a go bar deck, and we can look that stuff up, or you know. When we take another break, some of that stuff may be here from the booth nights. So long story short, I don't like upset necks because it can cause problems with the top of the guitar. I'd rather see one slightly underset and have less saddle. And even on vintage Martins, when I set them, especially if I was setting that 59 neck, I would, and since it doesn't have a belly bridge, I want the least amount of torque on that, but I do want saddle. So I would opt to have my neck angle with my relief calculated in to hit, maybe not roll up on the bridge, but a little bit shy, barely underset. I think it would be healthier for the guitar, and you would still have plenty of saddle to do whatever you needed to. So then when I cut this, I'm about to cut this top. I'm going to cut this angle. So I'm going to put it in the vise. And that's where this vise comes in handy. I'm going to take my file, the same file I've been using. And can you see this? Does it look good?
You look great.
And then I'm going to start cutting that first angle. Sounds good, doesn't it? I'm working this side first and then blending it out to nothing. Flip it. first initial cut. I want the backside to be a little shallower. True this vise up. Now at this point, I've got almost a chiseled edge on the top, which I don't want, which is fine because we just rough cut it. And then this is where my sanding sticks come in handy. I can switch over now to maybe some 320, and it keeps it nice and flat because I'm not softening anything yet. I'm trying to keep everything sharp at this point. Polishing out some of those file marks. I'm gonna soften these sharp edges. So I'm kind of doming those over.
Jason, I lost track. Why are we doing this?
Oh, I'm going to be honest with you. You don't have to do this when you make a saddle. You can
I
just.
think I remember that. But I don't remember
We're doing this to give a little bit of extra compensation there because, in most cases, you can use it.
So, intonation-wise?
Yeah, for intonation.
Okay.
We're just giving a. We're going a little bit farther than we with what we've got to go. What they gave us to work with. And honestly, when it comes to a Martin saddle, you don't have very much there to compensate. Me, I'm just trying to show if you wanted to compensate one, the steps, and it's not as hard as you think. You know, especially with this style, which I like. I'm almost done with compensation.
Yeah,
And
I'm just trying to remember where we were. We've been at it for a while.
This is a way to prevent from oversetting your neck as well, correct?
what?
This is a way to help prevent oversetting the neck, so you don't just tighten your truss rod forever or something, I don't know.
Well, no, I mean your truss rod and all that. Your neck angle, it'll make a lot more sense for your neck angle when I pull out. I got to mark the neck off of it.
Okay.
You know, we're going to go through that. Make sure you understand that your neck really doesn't necessarily. It can affect the neck angle a little bit, but that's just because of where it kicks at the very end, where the neck bows up, would make a neck angle seem shallower. But
This is just because of the way strings are designed, isn't it?
mm-hmm.
The core of the string.
Yeah, the core of the strings
Because nylon.
is different.
Yeah, you know, on a classical, there's no compensation or very little.
Yeah, there is sometimes you'll see what the bead on classicals maybe, not even that all the time. So now I'm going back over it with 400 grit, carved a little piece of 400 grit on here, and I'm softening those edges. I'm not really taking much of the bone off, but especially that top part. I'm just kind of going over the whole thing, getting close to my carvings. I'm doing this quick. I usually spend a lot more time on it, but we'll see what kind of result we get. It's going to work as far as the saddle goes. And for giggles, let's go 600 and then we'll put some polish on there. Usually I would go to 400, go straight to the buffing machine, and I'd get a really nice luster to it. But since I don't, I'm going to go from here to my 3M rubbing compound. You can get it at the hardware store. How do you pronounce it? McGill's? McGuire's? Yeah, I was way off on that. Same stuff, different company.
They look like plastic.
Yeah. Well, if I brought some, maybe I didn't. toothpaste would work too. I don't want to polish it up. All right, so now I'm going to use some steel wool. So normally from here I would go with the rubbing compound. It's made by 3M, and it'll really make that look nice. We got other ways to do it too. It just takes longer. I use 4-aught steel wool a lot. Now I don't use the stuff I get at the hardware store. This is made by Briwax, Briwax. It's 4-aught steel wool. It doesn't have hardly any oil in it. They try to take all the wool out of it from the machining process, and they also there's no random big strands in there. You can almost wipe with it, it's so soft. I can literally go on a fingerboard cross grain and not really see any scratching in it. And so I like it. So I'm just kind of polishing it up with this. This will give it a nice luster. And I'll pass this around and make a look at it. And that would really shine if you polish it up with stuff I didn't bring. Alright, start there, just pass it around. Then so another thing you'd want to do with that saddle, if possible, is when I thinned that saddle blade down, I just went straight 93 thousandths when I went through my drum sander. You could leave it bigger and then spend more time sanding it and polishing out the sides of it. Not that you're going to see it, but that's what I would do.
And that steel wool gives it that polish, just like that?
Yeah, I went to 600 grit.
Yeah.
I went 400. Well, I went with files, straight out with files, to 400 to 600. And so that's a pretty satin look to that, which is nice depending on what the guitar is. And then I went with a steel wool.
So would you? Oh, go ahead.
So I went fairly quick, but if I take that to a buffer from that stage, it'll shine. It'll really, really shine. It'll look like some of the nicest plastic you've ever seen.
So that's what you don't want to do with those radio looking discs. You don't want to make it look.
Yeah, they were built quick. When I pull a Gibson apart, like if I take the back off of Gibson or the top off of Gibson, take a look at it on the inside, they remind me of Harmony guitars. There's not a lot of difference, and then I'm recreating it all the time. Like if I've got a 40s a Gibson, and I got to replace a brace in there, then I'm trying to figure out how I can get the table saw marks onto the new brace. Because the new brace is gonna, if you plane it with a hand plane, it's gonna look so great.
Yeah.
And when you go in there, it sticks out like a sore thumb. It's not that they're poor. They had to build them fast, and because they're making guitars and they wanted to make money. The bottom line is they've got to, make somebody happy, so they got to pump out a lot of
When
guitars.
did they stop doing the handmade quality?
Ooh, well, I don't know. I'm sure most of the guitars, a lot of it is still handmade because at least put it together. I guess the invention of the CNC machine that'll probably stop a lot of it.
Yeah.
But
like when did they stop having a guy stand there carving braces?
ooh, that I don't know. They may still be carbon braces. I haven't been to some of these factories. I imagine the necks and things like that are mostly carved down CNCs.
Oh, yeah.
And all your blocks and things. The carbon braces may still just be done by hand.
Taylors come out.
All right. So before I put strings back on this, we'll just clean up these frets real quick.
Nice quick question.
Yes.
Would you slot that, that bridge like you would slot a nut? Like for the strings or? would
No,
you-
no, no, no. We're just gonna go let them go straight over.
Okay.
I've
Is
seen
that a
people-
normal thing to do?
I've seen people do that, and I'm not sure why, but I think some people, instead of, I bought acoustic guitars before that had a channel cut in it, I think, because they just didn't know to do that.
Yeah, usually it's not known.
That's a good way to break a string.
So like the way that you slot a nut for the string gauges that you're using? I don't play acoustic, so that's okay.
Yeah, generally on acoustic, your nuts is gonna be the only thing that's slotted.
Okay.
All right, so this,
Dr. Duck.
I'm using the same steel wool, and I'm cleaning the frets. I'm going with the grain of the wood, because I know the grain of the wood's going this way. And with this, I could technically go this way as long as I go back. I wouldn't use normal hardware store steel wool and go opposite the grain. But this stuff I generally can.
Yeah.
And that's why I like it. Now, steel wool's not great because it gets on everything, especially when you're working on electrics. So you want to try to, if you're working on electrics and acoustics, you want to try to clean things up. Do not use a magnet to pick up shavings if you're working on your electric, because it will mess up a pickup. And
Take off the whole pieces.
and
You ever use?
yeah, take off the gold pieces. What?
Dr. Duck wax, you ever use that?
No, I haven't. I haven't used that. All right, I got a Dremel wheel and some Red Rouge.
Is that made out of bone?
Take that and put on
Yeah, that's bone.
Is just like certain bone better?
I think it's going to be the big femur bone of a cow. Most of that stuff is going to be that.
That looks like it's new.
What'd you say?
That looks like it.
really does.
Looks like you bought it in the store.
Oh,
Or better.
we just carved it out. I take my Dremel wheel. I've got these little fret guards. that I can put on the fingerboard, run over the frets. We don't have to do this. I'm just doing it because it will look nice. And
Would you call that little tool?
what?
The little protector you just laid on?
Oh, it's a fret guard.
Right, right.
You can get those cheap. The first ones I ever used, I got it off of one of those Architect. To help you draw lines for drafting and stuff like that.
I've seen people take old credit cards, cut slots in old credit cards.
That's just a polishing wheel for a Dremel tool. That's all it is. It's a little felt pad.
What's that, triple E? The polish.
I wish I knew.
That's the brown stuff.
I've been using this for 20 years. It used to be a block this big. And then I'm gonna try to figure out what it is when this part's gone.
It looks like what they call triple E, so.
That's probably what it is.
Real fine.
I picked it out. I had a box of it. I found in the old shop, Bob's old stuff. I picked it out because the manufacturer, it had the name Burns on it. Yeah, I was like, well, that's cool. It ended up being the compound that I like. Although, a lot of times I won't use it if I'm doing a maple board because it's a dark color, which I don't care for. It didn't bring eye protection.
What do you use on a maple board though?
I usually will just go up in grits of paper and then use steel wool. Or, depending on the job and what it is, I'll tape up the whole board. Also, depending on if I think I'm going to rip all the finish off of it with the tape. So, you know, I do a lot of different things depending on what it is. This, we're Ebony. We're good to go. Straight on with this. I'm gonna put my rouge over here because I'll load this up a couple times. Well, looks one, but the feel of it's going to be slightly different. When you bend the string, it's going to feel slicker. Now so it's not always exactly what somebody wants. I mean, most of the time, yeah. But I will say this: once you polish out a stainless steel fret, it will make your set of 10 gauge strings feel like a set of 9s when you start playing on it, because it's just slick. Because this is a softer wire. The stainless steel is really hard.
What's your thoughts on the stainless?
I like them. I just don't always like the sound of them on different guitars. We'll pull out those two. I got one in stainless and one in not that I built. And I like playing on the stainless one because it feels slippery and it's just kind of different than what I'm used to. I hate working with it, just hate it. And I can't tell you enough how much you don't want to do a stainless fret job. So, and neither do I. But
Recrown.
yeah, it's terrible to do them too. Cutting it, recrowning it, shaping it to the board. It's just not fun. It's just because you get so used to regular fret wire. But
Is it worth it in the winter?
I think so. On the one guitar that mine that I did, and I've done probably 10 other fret jobs with stainless, if that. I don't recommend it because I'm afraid that people won't like the change of tone of their guitar because it gives this pinging kind of sound there with the note. Yeah. So sometimes, you know, especially on acoustics, it's kind of like maybe not. Electrics, you know, jury's still out on that. So those shined up nice. I'm gonna stop there. We'll throw a set of strings on there. So we'll move on to some different stuff. So we start getting bored with this. The goal is to make sure you know how to install frets and make sure you know how to dress fret ends and if I take it from a refret standpoint, then you'll get all the benefits of everything down to, hopefully I get some damage when I pull the frets out of that guitar. I mean, I don't usually say that, but.
Talk about the difference in phosphor, bronze, and 80-20
Well,
strings.
80-20 is going to typically sound brighter, and from my experience, and then your phosphorus bronze. I'm going to be using. Let's see. This takes over here. This player has phosphorus bronze.
Do coated strings change any of the tone?
Yeah, I think so. In some cases, it can get rid of a little bit of buzz, you know, because you can almost get this cushion there. So
Are you replacing those, whatever the hell they're called?
the bridge pins?
Yeah, those.
Not on this guitar. I wish, but we're not. I don't like the way those pins look.
Yeah, they don't look good at all.
It's just, I don't like looking at them.
Is it purely a look thing, or do you think it would sound better?
The player with this believed that this was gonna do something good for the guitar.
Add more claims, what a lot of people will tell you. But what came on the stock I think is ebony or tusk.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I was left stock before I was on that.
What about rattlesnake rattles?
Oh, the rattlesnake rattle. Well, the theory behind that was some people say it keeps the devil away. Some of it believes that it helps it regulate the humidity in the guitar somehow. That can't be real.
Yeah,
Now, what I honestly believe
guys used to do that.
was if you're smart, and where we all used to live apparently is in, I mean, you're here in Alabama, in the South, you see it, it's just a southern thing, you see it mostly. Alabama, Georgia, those type places,
Yeah.
country places.
I was in an unnamed guitar shop, and there was a antique Gibson J45 in there, and it had rattlesnake rattles.
Well, most of the time, the place that you were living, you know, in the early 1900s, wasn't much different in the South than maybe a barn. You know, so you've got rats, you've got all sorts of stuff. So if you took a rattlesnake rattle and dropped it down in a fiddle, if that rat started, and I've seen this before because I've pulled rats out of guitars, I've seen holes chewed in the sound holes of violins from rats, and I've even had one lady bring me a guitar that had a dead possum in it. So they're looking for a place to live. And so what better thing to do than to go ahead and drop a rattlesnake rattle. When that rat starts to mess with that hole, it's going to shake that violin and they're going to hear that rattle and they're going to go. And I honestly believe that's why people were doing it.
Yeah.
And,
And it turned into an old wives' tale.
yeah.
Oh, this one was great. It had the cigarette burns up there.
Yeah.
Big. Let's go.
Those affect the tone too. Really nice transparent imagery.
It's no joke.
It gave it.
All right, let's talk about ways of stringing guitars.
Yeah, let's do that.
Bunch of different ways. First thing I want to do is I'm going to reach in here and I'm going to make sure that the ball of the string is on the bridge plate with the pin.
Now, those slotted pins.
These are slotted pins, yes.
When you say slotted, that means that like.
They got a slot cut in front of the pin.
For the wire run down, right?
Yeah.
But you are for the non-slotted.
I prefer non-slotted. That's what guitar bridge pins originally were done in, just non-slotted. If you buy a Collins guitar, they don't have slots in it.
So they slot the bridge?
Yeah.
String?
Yeah, they slot the bridge instead of the pin. Now the reason they started to do slotted bridge pins was because it made it easier in a factory setting. You didn't have to spend the extra time to do that.
Yeah.
You could also mess with the gauge strings fairly easy because if someone slotted the bridge like perfectly for, you know, the chenille of one gauge string, then you wanted to use something different. Usually when I slide, I'll oversize the slide just a tad bit so somebody could, you know, switch gauges reasonably. Well, I like it because it puts the whole ball of the string onto the bridge plate. You know, once the whole ball is there, you're going to transfer more tone because normally if you don't have a slot cut in the bridge plate like most guitars, then you've got your bridge plate, you've got your top. You have you got your bridge, you got your bridge pin hole. So if you've got your bridge pin in here, and it comes down in here, and it's got a slot cut into it, then the ball is, since there's a slot in there, the string's going up in the slot, it's just on the bridge plate this much. Then we're going to compound that with the fact that, hey, let's not make bridge pins anymore. Let's just injection mold them into plastic because it's fast and it's economical. You know, in a factory setting, if they want different bridge pins, they could buy it. We're going to put plastic ones in here. It makes sense. You can turn it saves money in a factory setting. This is plastic. It starts to, you've seen it. It starts to bend backwards. Yep. It starts to work its way up through there. Then now this hole's nice and worn because that's not a flat surface. It's round. It's working against you already. It eventually works its way up through here. Once it hits the soft screws, it goes right through it, and now it's hooked onto the bottom of your bridge. And that's what pulls the bridge off the guitar. Among other things too, but once that starts to happen, it's that hook motion here, where the string comes down, hooks onto here, and then that's why your top rises and everything, because it's actually hooked onto your bridge plate. That's what's holding your strings on the guitar. Once you, so if you imagine if you cut a slot here instead, the whole ball is on the bridge plate. That completely fills the hole. You have the whole ball on the bridge plate now, and it's not a plastic pin, so it's not bending backwards. It also doesn't let, I don't know if I believe this, some people say, well, then when you use a solid shaft pin, you don't have air traveling back out those slots, so you get all your compression straight back out of this hole.
Every little.
You know, I don't know if that's true or not. I believe that it's healthy for the bridge plate, and that's good enough. That's good enough for me. So if you have a nice guitar, you may as well do it. And I get why people don't, because you've got some guy like me when they bring it into the shop saying, yeah, you know, you paid $3,500 for this Martin. Well, the bridge pins are crap. And at first I was like, wait a minute, I just paid $3,500 for a guitar. Then why are they crap? It's because, you know, of manufacturing. And then I'm going to tell them, now what I want to do is take that stock bridge pin out and then slot that thing with a saw. It's scary. And it is. I mean, if you don't know anything about, you know, guitars, it's a scary thing, and so I get it. So I always mention it. I always try to educate someone about it. And then if they want to do it.
How would you slot it? With a little?
Yeah, I use
I was going to ask the same, do you take it off or?
no, use the keyhole saw.
Uh-huh.
We'll just start passing them around. I got 2 different gauges. That's a keyhole saw. And I go straight up and down. And then I'm going to, and we'll try to do this on that Gibson. It sounds horrible because you're going. And then,
It doesn't take much though, right?
no, it's just the gauge of the string.
So you have different file width.
Or you put a rough cut with a little saw.
Yeah.
And then honestly what I do is I take after I do all of them, I've got a number of drill bits that that start off at like 40 thousandths of an inch, and then a drill bit that's like 50 something, about 60, and then 73. And I'll put, once I have the slot cut, I'll take a drill. This time around I was going to use the Dremel, chuck it into my Dremel, and then just run that, after the slot's actually cut, run that drill bit into the slot. I'm not drilling anything, and the edge of that drill bit kind of smooths it out.
Yeah.
And then polishes it out, because it's not really, it can barely cut from the side of the bit. You know, the bit really wants to cut from when it goes in. And so that's
So when you do the slot like that, what kind of bridge pins do you put back in?
solid shaft.
Like ebony or ivory or bone or?
Pass those around too.
All types of shows.
Yeah, or just turn the slot in.
Well, yeah. Who said that?
That's a solid shaft pin. Looks like a right pin. This is a solid shaft.
You said you could turn a slide shaft.
That's like an
Is that a
ebony,
viable
right?
option?
Yeah.
Put it down on the piece of paper there.
That's, there's nothing wrong with that at all, and I'll do that every once in a while if I've got, you know, an issue where there's kind of a slot that's been worn there. I'll take the person's bridge pin if they don't want to replace it, and I'll bring it around and put it back in if I think it's going to seat more on the bridge plate and be healthier. The other thing I used to do with Glenn Tolbert, I don't know if y'all know him, he passed away too long ago. He was a great bluegrass player.
Man, he was a wild man.
I would double ball his strings.
Really?
And when I was stringing his guitar, I would do it a certain way, which I'll show you. So he had a guitar that had a shallow bridge had been shaved a little bit. So the chenille was wanting to come up and touch the actual, and the chenille is the wrapping there around the actual ball of the string. Here's the ball, you know, you got that chenille,
I thought you were talking about the fur tube.
and then the string comes out of that. I would take a ball this way, you know,
Drop
Slide on
and
it.
drop it there, so then on the bridge plate, I have a flat
it.
ball
That makes sense.
and this. So you just cut the ball off with the old strings and then slide them down. And so then you've got solid shaft pin, a slide, and then you got full coverage of that bridge plate totally flat.
Big sense right there.
And
You don't wear
it's a
it
little
out.
like, yeah. And then if you've got somebody that's shaved the bridge down a little bit, it's too thin, it brings that wrapping a little farther down in there too, so it doesn't start hitting your saddle. All right, well, let's talk about stringing. Traditional way to do it, I usually have a fist, maybe a little bit less. And now when I've got the string in here, and the reason I don't need locking tuners is I'm gonna take that string and I'm gonna twist it this direction, all right? I can take that now, if I wanted to, and I can take the whole guitar, the string's not gonna come out. Yeah, if anybody wants to walk up here and look at this.
Oh, you pinched it.
I pinched it this way, like that.
Because the hole was oriented that
Yeah,
direction.
I started the hole off 90 degrees to the
You see it better up there?
Yeah. That's right. You been back that way? Just squeeze it up, yeah?
I told him I did it.
Jim told me everything I know.
Way to go.
I know.
All right, well now with that, I think it looks neat to go straight down the post. You don't, I'll show you a different way. Well, first, we'll do this one straight down the post.
You gonna wrap it back around?
Not on this one. No, you can. There's nothing wrong with that at all. I do that on my unwound strings. All right. So now here's what I'm going to do, and I don't know if this does anything for the tone of the guitar, except for the fact that Glenn Tolbert, when I did it to his guitar, I don't know if he just thought it was magical. No, he's. Oh, you can look at it. I thought you were going to. All right, so what
You reached in there and did what? In the sound hole?
yeah, I just made sure that those are seated on the bridge plate. I don't have anything crazy going on.
The bridge plate, is that right up against the top of the guitar?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's right up against the top. Maybe we may have a top in there somewhere. All right, so I'm going to loosen this string. I don't always do this. I'm just showing you this trick. And it may have been, I didn't come up with this. I read this on the internet. I think it was like Richard Hoover or somebody. And then they would take the pin out. I really hate these pins. Yep, and then take it, like you said, 1, 2, maybe 3 turns. Hold that tension there. See the string when I do this?
Yeah. And what's the purpose of that?
Never seen it.
It's supposed to give you a better tone. And he swore by it, and other people swear by it too. And I did it for another few guys when they would want a more brilliant tone out of a string, and they would all say, "Yeah, I think that really did something."
How many turns did you do?
I just did it 3 turns.
3 turns.
Yeah.
Dan
1,
Career.
2.
Away from
Yeah,
it.
you know Dan Career.
Oh, yeah, does he do that?
No, I don't.
Blueprint of the Steel.
Does he do that? So what does he say about it, you know? I've always,
Snake oil.
yeah, you know, to be truthful, I think a lot of stuff out there that you hear, you know, is magic.
Clockwise?
Yeah, it has to be clockwise.
From which
All right, I need
direction? That way, clockwise, or that way?
Which way do you turn?
You can turn it either way. We were just making a joke.
Has nothing to do with the,
Those
What?
nothing to do with the direction it's
Australians out
I
there.
don't think so. And I don't even know if that really
If you're on string,
enhances
you
the
have to string
tone.
it upside
It
down.
was a trick that I've always heard guys tell me. All right, here's another way to string it.
Maybe we could play out damn prairie if we do that.
Yeah. Same thing, I usually give about a fistful space there. I do the same, I might give this a little bit more, because I'm gonna go on top of the string that's coming out. I'm gonna do the same where I twist it. And then when I wind this, when I wind this, I'm gonna go above it.
Yeah, and then below it.
There you go. And then I'm gonna go below it. And then so when that gets tight, it's gonna sandwich against that string. And I usually don't wrap back on the blow strings. I usually don't wrap around like I'm gonna do and back over itself like I do on the high strings. Mainly because they're wound strings, so they grab and want to hold things, and it looks neater. Now I used to always do that. I just found that just over the years, you really need to. With having guitars come out of tune for that reason, go out of tune for that reason. And all right, this one's gonna blow your mind.
Slow pitch.
Jason, you ever pre-stretching?
No, I always just grab the string and kind of pinch like this. You know, squeeze them back and forth. And again, I don't like these bridge pins, and I wanted to do something besides these. The chenilles are wanting to grab those spots, but I've got metal bridge pins that I can't alter. So I have to live with them. All right, let's say you don't have a string winder and you want to string up a guitar. I'm not good at this method because I never use it. But I could take a string and pull it completely tight and string it this way. I could take it and I can wrap it. However many wraps I want. We'll give it 2 wraps, okay?
Let's see.
And then I'm gonna push this part through the hole.
Put it through the hole.
That's the way the guys at the gig do those a lot of times when they do it.
That's the way the guys in the Navy do it.
You just glue the string right there.
Super glue would do.
And then turn it up the pitch. I did exactly what I did on this first one, just backwards. I saw that one time, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe it. I didn't think of that all this time. And I don't like it because it's cumbersome and I'm so used to it, and then it makes me not get to use my favorite. Use that. So.
You don't leave your strings long to pick up the vibrations of the universe.
Good. G strings wound, so I'm going to do it. I'm just going to do this one my normal way. The guy's going to pick up his guitar and you can go, why did you string this so many different ways?
We'll see how fast you can do a guitar.
That thing right there is cool.
All right. So now these are plain strings, so I'm going to do the whole.
That's things sticking way up.
Well,
No. And that's because the chenille's wanting to, once it really presses up against the bridge plate, just grabbing those, the metal. If it was, you could file out the groove in the actual pin, make it better.
make it more better.
I'm gonna try to talk him into something different. We'll see what happens.
Those pins you pass around, are they heavy?
Yes. All right, I give about that much space. I'm gonna do the same twist. This time around, I'm gonna come underneath with this part. And I'm gonna pull up.
See, I've done it like that with all my strings.
Did that make sense to everybody? Who did it not make sense to?
That's how
Okay.
I've always done.
And that's the way I was taught to restring a guitar. That method right there. And it is totally fine on all 6 strings. So now this little piece right here, when I tighten it, it's gonna clamp on.
Try it.
See that?
Yeah, right.
Clamp.
You got an auto string, you spend 70% of your life tuning
Just 'cause
it,
we went very
30%
close
of
to
your
them
life playing.
holding
Hold up.
And then do you roll down?
What'd you say?
And then you wrap down after that?
Yeah, and then go down the post with your wraps. And we didn't do all that nonsense with the turning the string over here. I shouldn't say nonsense because it probably has something to do.
You don't do it
We'll
with,
s- Well, you would normally do it with all of them. We'll see if the low E string sounds.
yeah, but I mean, the treble strings, you don't do it. You don't put.
No, you would do it with all of them and just see what happens. I just didn't. I just did it with that one
Oh, I
string to show.
understand, yeah.
We'll see if for some reason the low E string is like super bright and wonderful and the rest of them are like dead. We'll find out.
Any other 3 or 4?
We'll see if they sound relatively the same compared to each other.
And they grab on themselves.
That sounds good.
All right, where is my
Cleaners up front there.
Peterson tuner?
Up front.
There we go.
And are you tuning into the, whatever you call it, like the mode?
I think we did.
Yeah, I got it on the.
That costs $10, that app.
What?
It costs $10, that app.
Yeah, the app it is $10. Or it used to be, I know.
Does the app have all those settings like?
I think so.
All 6 strings are going to get flat.
I think he could probably turn it.
Once we get this in tune, I'll switch it. We'll see.
Yeah. The old hotkey tunes, step back.
And I'm gonna stretch it a little bit. I know this
Are
is
you gonna
getting
switch
boring.
over, Jason?
What?
Are you gonna switch over to?
Yeah, I'm gonna switch it over and we'll see what happens.
This is.
We gotta play something first and see if it's
Make sure my strings are seated. Then,
You put some Vaseline up there.
yeah, I didn't. We'll see if we need it. I wasn't hearing it pinging. So we got 6/64 and 3/32.
4/64. That worked out good. We'll see if we can buy this. Let's make sure we're in tune. We'll see now what actually the tuning difference is.
What was the one that you're getting at?
Yeah, I was just checking to see if everything went all right.
Oh, rattlesnake.
Yeah.
That's all right, Mom.
These strings sound a lot
Hear it all day. Just a little.
Sounds so much better than the rest of them, doesn't it?
It's got their sustain.
It's funny with that. It's going back here. It sounds
Yeah, I can hear it too.
All right, let's see what difference we have.
Oh, that A string was really flopping.
So I'm reading, like the phone app should tell you how many cent, but I'm reading way flat on my E.
Sounds.
Now when I switch it back over to a little less flat on my A, my stroke's moving. D is barely flat. So is B.
It's the fan.
E is almost in tune. So they're tuning them flat until it's in tune for the James Taylor. We need to figure out what cents they are.
That is the James Taylor.
Yeah, that's what I read on the Peterson side there, the acoustic version.
On his
So-
website, he'll tell you exactly how many cents you
Uh-huh. All right, so.
Awesome. You don't pass it around.
I'll pass the other ones around. This isn't, I don't own this one. The rest of them I do, so.
So what would something like that generally cost?
What?
What would something like that generally cost?
That I would end up charging about $100 for in our shop. You know, it depends. A lot of it, you know, depends on what your overhead is and what you've got to deal with. Home was an expensive place to be. It wasn't always that way.
How about, to re-slot the bridge to use solid pins? What do you charge for that?
Usually about $50 plus whatever the pins are. And pins aren't too expensive. And I usually don't worry about making money on the part of the pins because I buy them from Stu Mack. And I want people to experiment with them, so I just tell them one where they can go to get the pins. We'll start off with a certain kind and just go from there.
Yeah.
So pins, you know, typically I've got a half an hour to an hour invested in it. And a rule of thumb, if you're doing this for a living and you got a shop overhead, if anyone decides they want to get into this, charge about what mechanics charge in your neighborhood, an hour. So in a shop in Homewood, a regular mechanic, you're supposed to charge what specialty mechanic charges, but a general mechanic, Robbie Malcolm might have called him this was 10 years ago. He said he charged $100 an hour. He said he had to make it in Homewood. And when you start looking at it that way, if you're running a shop, you got overhead. So let's say in Homewood, it's easy to have, you know, $5,000 overhead in 1 month that you got to pay. So let's say you have $4,000 a month. That's $1,000 a week. So that's to be there. It's $200 a day. So if you charged $50 an hour in an 8-hour day, that's $400. And then half of it's going to get burned up. Now here's a kicker: you can't work 8-hour day in an 8-hour day in a shop that's open to the public. So the general rule of thumb, when I sat down and started figuring this out, I kept was tracking my time, seeing how much in an 8-hour day I was actually working. And I was shocked to find out it was 4 hours in an 8-hour day. And then I started to research this, and then I came across a Dan Earlwine blog on it. And he said, typically, if you work a 2,000 hour a year, you're only going to work 1,000 hours of that year. Because the rest of it's going to be talking to customers. And you got to do that. You got to hold people's hands. You're dealing with something that's valuable to them. And they want to know, they want to be in the know, and if somebody needs their hand held through the process, and that's what you got to do. You know, otherwise you're not going to continue to be able to do it for a living. So you're going to spend half your day doing that, emailing, fixing machinery. You know, if you've got an apprentice or somebody working with you, you're dealing with them too. I have so many people that come in the shop that want an apprentice at the shop. What that means is that I'm going to lose 2 hours of my day on top of the 4 hours that I'm already doing. And so I have to decide if I want to invest into that, which I have, and most of the time it doesn't pan out. And then so you get a year or 2 years in, and then the person decides they want to do something else, which I understand because it's a tough thing to do. I mean, you got to have a thick skin, and we don't really have a thick skin because we really care about what we're doing. So when someone doesn't like it, it's hard because you really did enjoy not just enjoy it, but you believed in what you were doing. So you gotta have a thick skin, which is tough. And then it's just scary. You know, someone brings you a $10,000 instrument, and there's nobody else that's gonna work on it. And then, you know, you want to be able to do the best job you can, and you have to just make sure that you can do the job, to turn it away. Long story short, so if you charge $50 an hour, it costs you $200 to be in the shop, you're only gonna work 4 hours a day, then you're just showing up for free. And then you don't bring anything home, and that's a problem when you got a wife and 2 kids. So that means that your hourly wage has to be $100 if you want to bring in $50 an hour. And that's how Robbie Malcolm, who's passed away now, was explaining it to me. Because I was like, $100 an hour? I was like, is that what you're charging me whenever I come over there to get my car work done? He's like, yep. I was like, Seth, I thought you worked all day on my car. But you didn't.
Jason, you could have done what you did here to that guitar about an hour.
Yes. And hopefully less, you know, if I could, because I know that the next one down the line may take me an hour and a half. But I'm not going to call the guy that it took me an hour and a half and say, yeah, I changed my mind. I'm charging you $150 an hour. I mean, $150 for this job. You know, so you just have to average it out. And you're always going to lose on big jobs. I always do. Every time I take in a job and I quote $1,000 on it, when I check my time, you know, I'm always wrong. But
What would a $1,000 job be?
If I was doing a complete refret, fingerboard plane and a neck reset, because I would end up charging about $500 for the refret and about $500 for the neck reset. But there's always some problem that shows up.
Do you not account for that, or is it just $1,000 a good round number?
You want to make people happy. That's the problem. So you're excited about the job. You know, you bring me a 1959 Martin, I can't wait to take it apart. You know, there's a problem. You like what you do, so you're excited about it. You want to have that romance with that guitar. That's a problem. You also like the people that come in there because they've got something in common with them. They're musicians and they're customers that you probably already worked for. And so you don't want to disappoint them either. And you also know how hard it is to make a buck. And you know that their guitar's a luxury to them. And so it's, you know, charging them tons of money. So you get into all these, I mean, it's anybody who does this type of stuff, or whether it's making furniture, I mean, it doesn't matter. It's all gonna be the same thing. If you're passionate about what you do, then, you know, the worst thing you can do is to make money in the world is do something you like doing, because you're always gonna end up doing it for less. You know, if I was selling toilets, every one of y'all toilets would be super expensive. So, I don't know. All right, so we'll move on to something different, unless y'all want to take a break.
Let's do that.
Okay. What time is it?
3:15.
How long is it later?